The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched far beyond what any human eye could see. 12 different species sat around the massive circular table, their forms strange and wonderful. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales that changed color with their moods. A few looked almost like giant insects with crystal wings. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the hall. She was the only human in a room filled with beings who had traveled across the stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. Her small frame looked tiny compared to the towering aliens around her, but her voice was strong and clear. "Members of the Council," Elena began, "humanity asks for one more chance. We can learn, we can change." The Zephyrian representative rose from his seat. His blue skin rippled with anger, and his forearms moved as he spoke. "Change? Your people attacked our trading ships without warning. They killed dozens of our peaceful merchants." Elena's hands shook slightly, but she kept her voice steady. "Those were not trading ships. Your people were raiding human colonies, taking our children as slaves. Our people defended themselves." "Lies!" hissed the snake-like Cytherian delegate. Her long body coiled around her chair as she spoke. "Humans are violent by nature. They cannot control their anger. They are too dangerous to remain in civilized space." The leader of the council was a being called Archon Vex. He looked like a tall, thin tree with golden bark and leaves that glowed softly in the dim light. His voice sounded like wind through branches when he spoke. "Ambassador Vasquez," Archon Vex said slowly, "your species has been part of our galaxy for only 50 years. In that short time, you have caused more trouble than any other species in our history." Elena felt her heart sink, but she tried one more time. "We are young, yes, we make mistakes. But we also learn faster than any species you have ever known. We adapt, we grow. Give us time to prove ourselves." The crystalline delegate, a being made of living diamond, spoke next. Her voice rang like bells. "Your people form bonds too quickly with other species. You make alliances without permission from the council. You share technology without our approval. This chaos must end." "And what of the Vorthan incident?" asked the mollusk representative, his wet, gray skin glistening under the lights. "Your people helped the Vorthans fight against the hegemony. You had no right to interfere in that war." Elena's eyes flashed with anger. The hegemony was killing innocent civilians. Entire cities were being destroyed. How could we stand by and watch? "Because it was not your place to act," Archon Vex replied. "The Council makes these decisions, not individual species. This is why order exists in our galaxy." The avian delegate spread her beautiful feathered wings. "Humans do not understand their place. They think they can solve every problem with violence and emotion. They are children playing with weapons of war." Elena looked around the room at the faces staring down at her. Some showed disgust, others showed fear. A few seemed sad, but none showed support. "What you call violence, we call protection," Elena said. "What you call emotion, we call caring. Yes, we are young, yes, we make mistakes. But we have also saved lives. We have stopped evil when others would not act." The robotic delegate's mechanical voice cut through the air. "Your species grows too fast. Your technology advances too quickly. In 50 years, you have gone from primitive rockets to faster than light. Travel. This rate of growth is dangerous." "Dangerous to whom?" Elena asked. "We share our discoveries, we help others. We do not seek to conquer or control." "Not yet," said the gaseous representative, his form shifting like smoke. "But power corrupts all species. Humans will be no different." Archon Vex raised one of his branch-like arms for silence. "We have heard enough. It is time to vote. All in favor of removing humanity from civilized space?" One by one, 11 arms, tentacles, wings, and appendages rose into the air. Only Elena remained still, her human hands clenched at her sides. "The vote is unanimous," Archon Vex announced. "Humanity is hereby banished from all council space. You have 6 months to remove all human colonies, ships, and stations from our territory." Elena felt the weight of failure crushing down on her. Millions of humans lived in council space. They had built homes, started families, created new lives among the stars. Now all of that would be lost. Where are we supposed to go? She asked. Quietly. Beyond the outer rim, replied the Zephyrian delegate with satisfaction. Into the dark spaces where no civilized species travels. Perhaps the emptiness will teach you the peace you refuse to learn here. Elena straightened her shoulders and looked each delegate in the eye. You think you know humans, but you do not. You see our strength and call it violence. You see our loyalty and call it chaos. You see our hope and call it danger. We see the truth, hissed the Cytherian. No, Elena said, her voice growing stronger. You see your own fear? You are afraid that humans might be different, that we might find a better way, that we might show other species that your rigid rules are not the only path to peace. Archon Vex's leaves rustled with annoyance. You will have 6 months to leave. Use that time wisely, Ambassador. Learn to accept your fate with grace. Elena turned to leave, then stopped. You are making a mistake, she said without looking back. Humans do not simply disappear when you push them away. We survive, we adapt, we find new paths forward. And when we do, you may regret the choice you have made today. Is that a threat? Demanded the crystalline delegate. Elena turned back with a sad smile. No, it is a promise. Not of revenge, but of growth. You will hear from humanity again. When you do, remember this moment. Remember that you had the chance to guide us, to work with us, to help us become better. Instead, you chose fear. She walked slowly toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast hall. As the doors closed behind her, she heard the delegates, already discussing how to divide up the former human territories among themselves, outside the council chambers. Elena activated her communication device. This is Ambassador Vasquez to all human colonies and stations. Begin immediate evacuation procedures. We have 6 months to leave council space. The voice that answered was Admiral Sarah Chun, commander of the human fleet. Elena, what happened? In there, they voted us out, all of them, unanimous decision. There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then Admiral Chun spoke again, her voice grim but determined. Then we go beyond the rim, into the unknown. It will not be easy. Elena looked up at the stars visible through the stations. Viewport, somewhere out there, past the edge of known space, lay humanity's future. It would be dark and dangerous, but it would be theirs. No, she agreed. It will not be easy. But humans have never chosen the easy path. We choose the right path, even when it leads into darkness. As her ship prepared to leave the council station for the last time, Elena wondered what they would find in the empty spaces beyond the galaxy's edge. She could not know that their exile would lead to discoveries that would change everything. She could not know that the council's greatest fear, that humans would find a better way, was about to come true. All she knew was that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the humans left council space. The galaxy had grown quiet in ways that many found peaceful. Trade ships moved along their routes without fear of human interference. Diplomatic meetings followed proper protocol without humans asking uncomfortable questions or making unexpected alliances. Archon Vex stood in his private garden aboard the council station, watching the stars through the crystal dome above. His golden leaves rustled softly in the filtered air. The other council members often visited this place when they needed to think. Today he was alone with his thoughts. The crystalline delegate Prism materialized beside him. Her diamond body caught the starlight and scattered it in beautiful patterns across the garden walls. The quarterly reports have arrived, she said, her voice like distant chimes. Crime rates are down. Trade disputes have decreased by 40%. The outer rim territories we claimed from the humans are producing excellent resources. Archon Vex nodded slowly. Yes, peace at last. But something felt wrong to him, though he could not name what it was. The galaxy was more orderly now, more predictable. So why did he sometimes find himself staring toward the edge of known space, wondering what lay beyond? In the Zephyrian sector, Admiral Corax was reviewing patrol reports from his fleet. His blue skin had grown darker with age, and his forearms moved with practiced efficiency as he sorted through the data streams. The human territories his people had claimed were rich in rare metals and energy sources. His ships now controlled 3 times more space than before the human exile. Admiral, his aide approached, a younger Zephyrian with bright blue skin. The deep space sensors have detected another anomaly near the outer rim boundary. Corax looked up from his reports. What kind of anomaly? Unknown energy signatures, sir? Very powerful. The sensors can barely detect them at maximum range, but the readings are unlike anything in our databases. This was the 5th such report in the past 2 years. Each time, the sensors detected massive energy bursts from beyond the rim, but when investigation ships were sent, they found nothing. Empty. Space, no debris, no signs of any activity. Probably natural phenomena, Corax said, returning to his reports. The space beyond the rim is unexplored. There could be any number of stellar events causing these readings. The aide hesitated. Sir, some of the crew have been asking questions. About the humans, where they went. What they might be doing out. There. Corax's skin darkened further with annoyance. The humans are gone, scattered to whatever empty worlds they could find beyond the rim. They are no longer our concern. But as his aide left, Corax found himself staring at the sensor data. Again, the energy signatures were growing stronger over time, and they seemed to be moving in patterns that suggested intelligence rather than random natural events on the Zephyrian homeworld. Empress Scylla coiled around her throne of black stone. Her serpentine body gleamed under the red light of her worlds. Twin Suns, a messenger approached, sliding across the polished floor on his belly as was proper. Your Majesty, the messenger hissed, the mining colonies in the former human territory report unusual sensor readings. Scylla's eyes, like golden coins fixed on the messenger, explain. Strange gravitational distortions, Majesty. And 3 of our deep mining ships have gone silent near the rim boundary. No distress calls, no wreckage found. This troubled Scylla more than she cared to admit. Zephyrian ships were among the most advanced in the galaxy. For them to simply vanish without a trace was nearly impossible. Send more ships to investigate, she commanded. We have, Majesty. 2 full exploration fleets have been dispatched to the area. Neither has reported back. Scylla's body tensed. 5 ships lost now with no explanation. But she would not show fear before her subordinates. The space beyond the rim is dangerous. This is why we do not venture there. Double the patrols along our borders, but do not send any more ships into that cursed region. As the messenger left, Scylla stared out at the stars visible from her throne room. Somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy, in the darkness where no civilized species dared to go, something was happening. Something that could make entire fleets disappear without a trace. The mollusk colonies had always been efficient. Their wet, gray cities functioned like living organisms, each part working in perfect harmony with the whole. Governor Flux moved through the central command chamber, his tentacles touching various control surfaces to monitor the flow of information across his territory. The former human worlds his people now controlled were rich in water and organic compounds, perfect for mollusk colonization. His population had grown by 20% in just 5 years. Governor, one of his technicians called out, we are receiving strange readings from our deep space monitoring stations. Flux slid across the chamber to examine the data himself. His people were excellent at detecting subtle changes in their environment. If they said something was strange, it was worth investigating. These energy patterns, Flux murmured, his voice gurgling softly. They do not match any known stellar phenomena, and they appear to be artificial. Should we report this to the Council? The technician asked. Flux considered this. The readings were coming from beyond the rim, from the direction the humans had been exiled. But humans were primitive. Their technology was crude compared to Council standards. They could not possibly be creating energy signatures this powerful. No, he decided. Continue monitoring, but do not alarm the other species unnecessarily. This is probably some unknown natural event. But privately, Flux wondered if they had made an error 5 years ago. The humans had been young and reckless, yes, but they had also been remarkably adaptable. What if, in their exile, they had discovered something in the dark spaces that the Council had never imagined? In the avian territories, Wing Commander Skara soared through the crystal spires of her floating city. Her rainbow feathers caught the light of her world's golden sun as she flew toward the military command center. Her people valued grace and beauty above all things, but they were also excellent warriors when the need arose. "Commander," her aide greeted her as she landed, folding her wings with practiced elegance. "The border monitoring station's report?" "Unusual activity." Skara tilted her head, a gesture that among her people indicated serious attention. "What kind of activity?" "Ships, Commander, unknown design. They appear briefly on long-range sensors, then vanish before our patrols can intercept them." This was the most concrete report any species had received. Actual ships, rather than just energy signatures or missing vessels. "How many ships?" Skara asked. "Difficult to determine. The signatures are unlike anything in our databases, but the energy readings suggest vessels of considerable size and power." Skara's feathers ruffled with concern. "From what direction do they approach?" "The outer rim, Commander." "From beyond the boundary of known space." The direction the humans had gone? Skara remembered the final words of Ambassador Vasquez 5 years ago, a promise that humanity would survive, adapt, and find new paths forward. At the time, it had seemed like the desperate words of a defeated species. Now, she was not so sure. Across the galaxy, similar reports were filtering in to governments and military commands. Strange energy readings, missing ships, unknown vessels, at the edge of sensor range. All coming from the same direction, the dark space beyond the outer rim, where the humans had been exiled. But the Council members did not share this information with each other. Each species guarded its secrets jealously, unwilling to admit that they might have made a mistake. Each assumed the others were not experiencing similar problems. Archon Vex stood in his garden again, watching the stars. The quarterly council meeting would be held soon, and the reports would show continued prosperity and peace throughout civilized space. Crime was down, trade was up. The galaxy was more stable than it had been in decades. So why did he feel a growing sense of unease? Why did his leaves rustle with worry when he looked toward the outer rim? Why did he sometimes dream of Ambassador Vasquez's final words echoing through the council chambers like a prophecy? "You will hear from humanity again," she had said. "When you do, remember this moment." Archon Vex tried to dismiss these thoughts as the foolish fears of old age. The humans were gone, scattered and broken in the empty spaces beyond civilization. They posed no threat to the ordered galaxy the Council had created, but deep in his ancient heart, he suspected that humanity's silence was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of something growing in the darkness, something preparing to emerge stronger than anyone had imagined possible. The galaxy enjoyed its peace, unaware that the quiet was about to end. Captain Zax of the Zephyrian Deep Space Fleet had been hunting pirates for 3 weeks. His ship, the Stormcutter, was one of the fastest vessels in the Zephyrian Navy. His blue skin had grown pale from spending too much time under artificial lights, and his forearms moved restlessly as he studied the sensor displays. "Captain," his sensor officer called out, "we are picking up the pirate ship's trail. It leads toward the outer rim boundary." Zax cursed it in his native language. Pirates often fled toward the rim when pursued, knowing that most military ships would not follow them into the dangerous unknown regions beyond civilized space. "How far beyond the boundary?" Zax asked. 3 light years, sir." "Still within our patrol range." Zax made his decision. Pirates could not be allowed to escape justice, even if it meant venturing into the dark spaces where humans had been exiled. "Set course, maximum speed." The Stormcutter jumped to hyperspace, its engines pushing the boundaries of safe travel. When they emerged, they found themselves in a region of space that had never been mapped by any Council species. The stars here were older, dimmer, arranged in patterns that seemed somehow wrong. Sir, the sensor officer's voice carried a note of confusion. I am detecting something massive on long-range scanners. It does not match any known stellar phenomena. Zax moved to the sensor station and studied the readings himself. What he saw made his blood run cold. The object was huge, larger than most moons, and it was clearly artificial. Geometric patterns covered its surface, and energy readings suggested technology far beyond anything the Council possessed. By the four winds, Zax whispered. What is that thing? Before anyone could answer, new contacts appeared on the sensors, ships, dozens of them, approaching from all directions. Their design was unlike anything in the Council databases, sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to move through space like living creatures swimming through water. Red alert, Zax commanded. Raise shields, charge weapons. But as his crew scrambled to battle stations, something impossible happened. Their weapons simply stopped working. The shield generators went silent. Even the ship's engines cut out, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. What is happening? Zax demanded. His chief engineer, a young Zephyrian female, worked frantically at her station. All systems are being affected by some kind of field, Captain. It is not jamming our equipment. It is somehow convincing our machines that they do not want to work. The unknown ships surrounded the storm cutter in a perfect sphere. They made no aggressive moves, but their message was clear. The Zephyrian vessel was completely helpless. A new voice came over the communication system. It spoke in perfect Zephyrian, but with an accent that Zax had not heard for 5 years. Zephyrian vessel, this is Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Concordat. You have entered protected space. State your business here. Zax felt his heart skip a beat, a human voice. But that was impossible. The humans had been exiled beyond the rim. They were supposed to be scattered and broken, struggling to survive on whatever empty worlds they could find. This is Captain Zax of the Zephyrian Navy, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. We are pursuing pirates who fled into this region. Pirates are not welcome in Concordat space, the human voice replied. Your quarry has been detained and will be returned to you. However, your presence here presents a problem. What kind of problem? Zax asked. There was a pause before the human commander responded. You have seen things that the galaxy is not yet ready to know about. We cannot allow you to return with this information. Zax felt panic rising in his chest. You cannot hold us prisoner. The Council will demand our return. The Council expelled us from their space, Commander Chun replied, and Zax could hear old pain in her voice. They made it clear that we were not welcome among civilized species. We have honored their wishes by staying beyond the rim, but that also means we are no longer bound by Council law. The largest of the unknown ships moved closer to the storm cutter. As it approached, Zax could see details that made his head spin. The hull seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that flowed and shifted like water. Symbols glowed along its surface in languages he had never seen before. However, Commander Chun continued, we are not the monsters the Council painted. U.S. to be, your crew will be given a choice. You may join us here in our new home, or you may return to Council space with modified memories of this encounter. Modified memories? Zax repeated. A gift from our new friends, the human commander explained. Your minds will remember pursuing pirates to the rim boundary, finding nothing and returning home. You will retain no knowledge of what you have seen here. Zax looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him with wide eyes, waiting for his decision. Through the view screen, he could see the massive structure looming in the distance. Smaller constructs moved around it like moons orbiting a planet. The technology on display was beyond anything he had imagined possible. What if we choose to stay? He asked. Then you become citizens of the Terran Concordat, Commander Chun replied. You will be welcomed as equals, free to pursue whatever life you choose among the stars. But you can never return to Council space. That life will be behind you forever. Zax thought of his homeworld, with its crystal cities and flowing air currents. He thought of his family, his career, everything he had built over decades of service. But he also thought of the wonder he was witnessing here. Humans had not simply survived their exile. They had found something incredible in the darkness beyond. "The rim, I need to see more," he said finally. "Before I can make this choice, I need to understand what you have become." "Very well," Commander Chun agreed. "Prepare for transport. A small group of your crew may accompany you. The others will remain aboard your ship under our protection." The transport was unlike anything Zax had experienced. One moment he was standing on his bridge, the next he was materializing in what appeared to be a garden. But this was no ordinary garden. Plants from dozens of different worlds grew together in impossible harmony. The air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. Commander Chun stood waiting for them. She was older than Zax remembered from the news broadcasts 5 years ago, her hair now streaked with gray. But her eyes held a light that spoke of wonders seen and knowledge gained. "Welcome to Haven Station," she said with a smile. "One of our smaller installations." "Smaller?" Zax gasped, looking around. The space was vast, stretching beyond the horizon in all directions. "The structure you saw from your ship is New Terra, our primary research and diplomatic center," Commander Chun explained as she led them through the garden. "It houses over 50 million beings from 47 different species." 47 species? Zax repeated. "But there are only 12 species in the Council." "The galaxy is much larger than the Council imagined," Commander Chun replied. "Beyond the rim, we discovered civilizations that had never heard of your alliance. Some had been hiding from what they saw as Council aggression. Others simply preferred the freedom of the outer regions." They walked through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they moved. Other beings passed them, some humanoid, others completely alien. Zax saw creatures that looked like living crystals walking alongside beings made of pure energy. None of them seemed surprised to see Zephyrians. "How is this possible?" Zax asked. "When you left Council space, you had no technology like this." "Commander." Xion stopped before a massive window that looked out into space. In the distance, Zax could see ships of every imaginable design moving in complex patterns around the great structures. Some were clearly human in origin, but others belonged to species he had never seen before. "We met the architects," Commander Chun said simply. "The architects?" Zax had never heard the name before. An ancient species that withdrew from galactic affairs long before the Council was formed. They had been watching the galaxy for millennia, waiting for a species that might be worthy of their knowledge. Commander Chun turned to face him, and Zax saw something in her expression that made him understand the magnitude of what had happened here. "They chose humanity not because we were the strongest or the smartest," she continued. "They chose us because we were the only species they had encountered that consistently chose cooperation over domination. When we arrived in their space as refugees, broken and cast out, they saw something the Council had missed." "What did they see?" Zax asked quietly. "They saw a species that would share power rather than hoard it. That would lift others up rather than push them down. That would face the unknown with curiosity rather than fear." Zax looked out at the incredible vista before him. Ships from dozens of species working together. Stations that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. Technology that seemed like magic. "The Council was afraid we would become conquerors," Commander Chun said. "Instead, we became builders. They feared we would bring chaos. Instead, we brought unity to species that had never imagined such cooperation was possible." As Zax watched, a massive ship unlike anything he had ever seen glided past the window. Its hull bore markings in the flowing script of the architects, but Zax could also see human symbols and the writing of species he did not recognize. "What happens now?" he asked. Commander Chin's expression grew serious. "Now, Captain Zax, you—" 3 days had passed since Captain Zax's ship failed to return from the outer rim. Admiral Korax paced his command center, his forearms moving with growing agitation. The blue patterns on his skin darkened with each hour that brought no word from the missing vessel. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission. It is Captain Zax." Korax hurried to the communication station. Put him through immediately. The screen flickered to life, showing Zax's familiar face. But something was different about him. His eyes held a distant look, as if he had seen things that changed him forever. "Admiral," Zax said, his voice strangely calm, "we pursued the pirates to the rim boundary. We found nothing. The trail went cold in empty space. We are returning to base now." Korax frowned. Something felt wrong about this report. "Captain, you have been missing for 3 days. What took you so long to make contact?" Zax paused for a moment, as if trying to remember something just beyond his reach. "Navigation problems, sir. The gravitational fields near the rim are unpredictable. We had to recalibrate our system several times." After the transmission ended, Korax stared at the blank screen. The explanation made sense, but his instincts told him there was more to the story. He had known Zax for 20 years. The captain had never given such a vague report before, unknown to Admiral Korax. Similar conversations were taking place across the galaxy. Ships that ventured too close to the outer rim returned with their crews intact, but their memories strangely unclear about what they had found in the darkness beyond civilized space on the Cytherian homeworld. Empress Scylla received disturbing news from her intelligence network. 3 separate exploration fleets had returned from the rim with identical stories of equipment failures and empty space. But her spies had intercepted fragments of encrypted communications that told a different tale. "Your Majesty," her chief spy hissed as he approached her throne, "our deep listening posts have detected something unusual. Transmissions in human language, but using technology far beyond what humans possessed when they were exiled." Scylla's golden eyes narrowed. "Show me." The spy activated a holographic display that showed wave patterns and energy signatures. "The transmissions are heavily encrypted, but we have managed to decode small portions. They speak of something called the Terran Concordat, and there are references to species we have never heard of before." "Impossible," Scylla said, but her voice carried doubt. "The humans were scattered to empty worlds beyond the rim. They could not have built anything significant in just 5 years." "There is more, Majesty. Our deep space sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving in formation near the rim boundary. The patterns suggest a fleet of enormous ships, but the technology readings are unlike anything in our databases." Scylla coiled her body tighter around her throne. The humans had been exiled because they were unpredictable and dangerous. If they had somehow acquired advanced technology in their exile, they could pose a threat to the entire galaxy. In the crystalline territories, Prism floated in her crystal chamber, processing information at speeds that would have overwhelmed most organic minds. Data streams flowed through her diamond body as she analyzed reports from across the galaxy. The pattern was becoming clear. Every species in the Council was experiencing the same phenomena. Strange energy readings from beyond the rim, ships returning with altered memories, intercepted transmissions in human language, using unknown technology, but none of the Council members were sharing this information with each other. Each species guarded its secrets, unwilling to admit that the human exile might not have gone as planned. Prism made a decision that would change everything. She opened a secure communication channel to Archon Vex. "Ancient One," she said when the tree-like being answered, "we need to convene an emergency council session. I have information that affects us all." Archon Vex's leaves rustled with concern. "What kind of information?" "Information about the humans." 2 days later, the council chambers filled with representatives from all 12 species. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the electric charge of fear and uncertainty. Each delegate carried classified reports they had never intended to share. Archon Vex called the session to order, his voice carrying the weight of ages. "We are here because disturbing reports have reached us from across the galaxy. Reports that suggest our decision to exile humanity may have had unexpected consequences." The Zephyrian delegate, Admiral Korax himself, spoke first. "Our ships have been experiencing equipment failures near the rim boundary. Crews return with gaps in their memories. And our deep space sensors detect massive energy signatures from beyond the edge of known space. The Cytherian representative hissed in agreement. We have intercepted human transmissions using technology far beyond their previous capabilities. They speak of something called the Terran Concordat. One by one, each delegate shared their classified information. The mollusk colonies reported gravitational anomalies that suggested artificial structures of impossible size. The avian scouts had detected ships moving in formations that displayed tactical knowledge beyond anything humans had possessed during their exile. The robotic networks had picked up data transmissions using encryption algorithms that should not have been possible with human technology. As the reports accumulated, a terrifying picture began to emerge. Humanity had not simply scattered to empty worlds beyond the rim. They had found something there, something that had transformed them from refugees into a potential superpower. This cannot be possible, the gaseous delegate said, his form shifting. With agitation, humans are a young species. They lack the knowledge and resources to build anything significant in just 5 years. Prism stepped forward, her crystal body casting rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. Unless they found help. Our long-range surveys of the space beyond the rim have always shown it to be empty. But what if we were wrong? What if there were civilizations out there that we never detected? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy was vast, and the Council controlled only a small portion of it. If there were ancient civilizations beyond the rim, civilizations that had remained hidden from Council sensors, then humanity might have found allies that made their exile a blessing rather than a curse. Archon Vex's leaves rustled with growing alarm. If this is true, then we face a problem greater than we imagined. We exiled humanity because we feared their unpredictability and rapid advancement. If they have gained access to technology beyond our understanding, they could return as conquerors. The robotic delegate finished with mechanical certainty, but as the Council debated their response, events were already in motion that would make their fears reality in ways they had never imagined. In the depths of space, beyond the furthest reach of Council sensors, Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the TSC Harmony. The ship was a masterpiece of combined human and architect technology, stretching for kilometers through space like a city among the stars. Elena was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes still held the fire that had burned bright during her final speech to the Council 5 years ago. Around her, beings from dozens of species worked together with an efficiency that would have amazed the Council members who had dismissed humanity as chaotic and unpredictable. Admiral, her communications officer reported, "We are receiving intelligence from our operatives in Council space. The Council has discovered evidence of our presence." Elena nodded calmly. She had been expecting this day for months. The Terran Concordat had grown too large and too active to remain completely hidden. Their ships were now traveling throughout the galaxy beyond the rim, making contact with species that had never known the Council existed, offering alliance and friendship to those who had been ignored or oppressed by the galactic government. "It was inevitable," she said. "How are they reacting?" "With fear, Admiral. Our sources report emergency Council sessions and military buildups along the Rime boundary. They believe we intend to invade their space." Elena smiled sadly. Even now, after 5 years of exile, the Council still did not understand humanity. They could only imagine that any powerful species would use their strength for conquest and domination. They could not conceive of a civilization that grew strong by lifting others up rather than pushing them down. "Open a channel to all Concordat vessels," Elena commanded. "Send a message to every species in our alliance. Tell them it is time." "Time for what, Admiral?" her second-in-command asked. Elena turned to look out at the stars, toward the distant space where the Council maintained their rigid order through fear and control. Somewhere out there, beyond the rim that had been meant as humanity's prison, lay the galaxy that had cast them out. "Time to show them what humanity has become," she said. "Time to offer them the choice we never had. Join us in building something better, or watch as the galaxy grows beyond their control." The Terran Concordat had been born from exile and rejection. but it had grown into something the Council could never have imagined. And now, as Elena prepared to make contact with the civilization that had cast humanity into the darkness, she knew that the galaxy was about to change forever. The age of the Council's unopposed rule was ending. The age of the Concordat was about to begin. The emergency alert rang through every Council world at the same moment. Massive energy signatures had appeared at the edge of known space, moving slowly but steadily towards civilized territory. The readings were so powerful that they overloaded. Sensors across the galaxy. ARCHON Vex stood in the Council chambers, watching as holographic displays showed the approaching fleet. His ancient leaves trembled as he tried to process what he was seeing. Hundreds of ships, each one larger than the biggest Council vessels, moved in perfect formation through space. Their design was unlike anything in the galaxy's databases. "How many?" he asked quietly. "Over 300 capital ships," Admiral Corax reported, his blue skin pale with fear, "and thousands of smaller vessels. Energy readings suggest technology centuries ahead of our own. The crystalline delegate prism processed data streams at her maximum speed. They are not approaching aggressively. No weapons are charged, no hostile formations. They appear to be, She paused, as if unable to believe her own analysis. Peaceful. Peaceful? Hissed the Cytherian representative. A fleet that size could destroy every Council world. Nothing peaceful requires such massive force. Before anyone could respond, every communication system in the Council chambers activated at once. The screens filled with the image of a human woman, older now but unmistakably familiar to those who had been present 5 years ago. "Greetings, members of the Galactic Council," Admiral Elena Vasquez said, her voice calm and measured. "This is Admiral Vasquez of the Terran Concordat. I believe we have much to discuss." Archon Vex stepped forward, drawing on centuries of diplomatic experience to keep his voice steady. "Admiral Vasquez, you return with quite an impressive fleet. Should we consider this an invasion?" Elena smiled, but there was sadness in her expression. "Not an invasion, Archon Vex. An offer of assistance. The galaxy faces threats that no single species can handle alone. We come to propose a new alliance." "Alliance?" The robotic delegate's mechanical voice carried disbelief. "You were exiled from civilized space. Why would you offer alliance to those who cast you out?" "Because holding grudges serves no one," Elena replied. "And because the galaxy needs unity now more than ever?" As if summoned by her words, new alarms began sounding throughout the Council chambers. Different energy signatures were being detected at the galaxy's outer edge. But these were not peaceful. These were hostile, alien, and moving fast. "What is that?" Admiral Corax demanded, staring at the new sensor readings. Elena's expression grew grim. "The Devourers, an extragalactic species that consumes entire worlds for resources. They have been moving toward this galaxy for decades. Our deep space monitoring stations detected their approach 2 years ago. The sensor displays showed massive swarms of organic-looking ships, darker than space itself, moving like a plague across the star systems at the galaxy's edge. Where they passed, stars went dark." "Impossible," breathed the mollusk representative. "Nothing could consume entire star systems." "They have consumed 3 galaxies that we know of," Elena said quietly. "They strip worlds of all resources, including the planets themselves. Every living thing is absorbed into their collective. They leave nothing but empty space behind." The Council members stared in horror as the sensor readings showed entire systems winking out of existence as the Devourer swarm passed through them. "How long do we have?" Archon Vex asked, his ancient voice heavy with dread. 6 months until they reach the first Council worlds," Elena replied. 18 months until they reach the core systems." The avian delegate spread her wings in a gesture of despair. "Our combined fleets cannot stand against something like this. If they have consumed entire galaxies... The Council fleets alone cannot stop them," Elena agreed. "But together, with the resources and knowledge of the Terran Concordat, we might have a chance." What are you proposing? Archon Vex asked. Elena's image was replaced by detailed tactical displays showing ship designs, defensive strategies, and technological specifications that made the council representatives gasp with amazement. The architect technology we have access to includes weapons and defenses far beyond anything the Devourers have encountered, Elena explained. But the scale of this threat requires every resource in the galaxy. Every ship, every world, every species working together. The Zephyrian Admiral Korax studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. These weapon systems. They could destroy Devourer ships that our entire fleet could not scratch. But you said this requires cooperation. What exactly are you asking for? Elena's image returned to the screens. The dissolution of the current council structure. The formation of a new galactic government based on equality rather than hierarchy. Every species, no matter how small or young, would have an equal voice in decisions that affect them. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The Cytherian representative coiled with rage. You ask us to surrender our authority? To give up the order we have maintained for millennia? I ask you to share power instead of hoarding it, Elena replied. Calmly. The current system failed when it cast out an entire species for being different. How many other species have been ignored or oppressed because they do not fit the Council's rigid expectations? As if to emphasize her point, new ships began appearing on the sensor displays. Vessels from species the Council had never seen before emerged from hyperspace around the Concordat fleet. Strange, beautiful designs that spoke of civilizations that had thrived beyond the reach of Council influence. These are our allies, Elena continued. 47 species that the Council never knew existed. Civilizations that were dismissed as primitive or ignored entirely. Together we have built something stronger than the sum of our parts. The crystalline delegate processed the data streams from the unknown ships. Some of these designs, they show technological innovation decades ahead of our own. How is this possible? Because innovation thrives when beings are free to explore new ideas, Elena said. When species are not forced to conform to a single standard of civilization. When differences are celebrated rather than feared. Another wave of alarms interrupted the discussion. The Devourer swarm had accelerated, consuming 3 more star systems in the past hour. The timeline had shortened dramatically. We do not have time for lengthy debates, Elena said urgently. The Devourers will not wait while we argue about political structures. Every minute we delay, more worlds are lost. Archon Vex looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. Fear and uncertainty filled their faces, but also something else. Hope. For the first time in centuries, they were being offered a solution to a problem they could not solve alone. What assurances do we have? He asked finally. How do we know the Terran Concordat will not simply replace council authority with human authority? Elena smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young ambassador who had stood in this same chamber 5 years ago. Because that is not who we are. We learned something in our exile, Archon Vex. We learned that strength comes not from ruling others, but from lifting them up. Not from imposing our will, but from finding common ground. She gestured, and the display showed images of the incredible structures humanity had built beyond the rim, cities that housed dozens of species in harmony. Research stations where beings that had never met before worked together to solve problems. Fleets where ships from different worlds flew together as equals. This is what we offer, Elena said. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not submission, but partnership. A galaxy where every species can reach its full potential without fear of being cast out for being different. The mollusk representative spoke for the first time, his voice carrying wonder. The integration patterns. The resource sharing. This is more efficient than anything we have achieved in 1,000 years of council rule. Because it is based on trust rather than fear, Elena replied, on inclusion rather than exclusion. More alarms sounded as the Devourer swarm consumed another system. Time was running out for the entire galaxy. We need an answer, Elena said urgently. Will you join us in building something better, or will you face the devourers alone with the same rigid thinking that cast humanity into exile? Archon Vex closed his ancient eyes and made the hardest decision of his long life. When he opened them again, his voice carried the weight of history changing. "The Galactic Council formally requests to join the Terran Concordat," he said. "As equals, as partners, as beings who choose hope over fear." One by one, the other delegates added their agreement. Some spoke with enthusiasm, others with reluctance, but all with the understanding that their old way of thinking had led them to this moment of crisis. Elena nodded solemnly. "Then let us begin. We have a galaxy to save, and we will save it together." As the combined fleets of the Council and the Concordat began coordinating their defense against the approaching darkness, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had been cast out as dangerous and unpredictable. They had returned as the galaxy's salvation. The Council had driven the humans out, fearing what they might become. Now they would discover that their fears had been both completely wrong and absolutely necessary. Wrong because humanity had become builders, rather than destroyers. Necessary because without that exile, humanity would never have found the strength to save them all.